Hi, good morning, everyone, all you ODA users. My name is Tammy Bednar. I'm still drinking my coffee, and I'm talking to you from Oracle headquarters in California. So it's a little early. That's why I still have my coffee. Today, for the next few minutes, I thought I'd kind of chat to you about the latest ODA patch. And the capability, or the big capability in it, is the ability to expand your ODA X7 and X6 storage. So the latest patch number is 12.2.1.4. You can find all the information about the latest patch in the Oracle Database Appliance release notes. 2 weeks ago, we talked about where you can find information about patching. So again, going back to the release notes, 12.2.1.4 release notes that just came out, and the main feature is expanding your storage. So let's talk about how you can expand your storage with the latest patch set. So the ODA, let's start with ODA X7-2M. I'd like to share just this one slide on the PowerPoint. And this is a picture of the X7-2M hardware. And you can see that it has 8 slots. The base configuration of the X7-2M has the two 6.4 terabyte NVMe drives inserted into slot 0 and 1. To expand the storage, you can add 3 more drives at a time for a total of 8 different drives. So the way to expand the storage on the X7-2M is, first of all, you have to be on the 12.2.1.4 patch release. Then you can buy a 3-pack of NVMe drives, and the first 3 that you buy, expanded storage, will go in slot 2, 3, and 4. And then if you buy 3 more, if you buy 6, and of course you fill it up, and then the last 3 will go in slots 5, 6, and 7. You insert the drives, you power them on, and then you run the ODA commands. So I would definitely recommend going to the documentation of the latest documentation of the X7 to take a look at more information about how to expand the storage. So that's on the X7-2M. The next part that I'd like to share is the X7-2HA. If you remember, if you've looked at the X7-2HA, we have 2 types of storage or capabilities. You can either run the HA with all high performance drives, which are SSD drives, or you can also have the option for high capacity using the HDD drives. So let's take a look at the high performance. And we'll go to this slide here. And if you take a look at the X7-2HA storage, you can see you can start with the base JBOD storage, which has the 800 gig drives for the database redo logs, and it comes with 5 3.2 terabyte SSDs. At that point, you can add a 5-pack or add 5 more SSD drives at a time. And to fill it up, you can add 15 more additional SSDs. And then if you want additional storage, you can add a fully populated expansion shelf. And that will provide you with 64 terabytes of raw SSD storage in the first, and then add an additional 64 terabytes of the SSDs for database files. You can see that the expansion shelf also carries the 4 800 gig drives for redo logs, so you will also expand your redo log storage capability as well. Okay, so that was the X7-2HA for the high performance. Let's look at the high capacity really quickly, as it is the same capability. Oops, let me go back and share that slide with you. Oops. Doesn't want to let me do that right now. There we go. Okay. Okay. So here is a slide on the X7-2HA high capacity. Again, you can start with the base JBOD with the 800 gig SSDs in the top slots and then the 3.2 terabyte SSDs in the bottom shelf. However, if you know that you want to use the high capacity drives, then I would recommend that you buy the fully populated JBOD that has the 10 terabyte HDD drives in them. This will give you 150 terabytes of HDD. If you don't, if you start out with the base JBOD, which is just fine, and you deploy your ODA, that's okay. But when you want to expand with the additional HDDs, unfortunately, you can see that you'll have to move those 3.2 terabyte drives up and then add in the 10 terabyte HDDs and redeploy. That's kind of a painful operation. So if you know up front that you want high capacity, I would recommend buying the fully populated high capacity JBOD. If you want additional capacity, you can add one more expansion shelf that will provide you 300 terabytes of HDD raw storage. And you can see that you also have the additional 800 gig or the 4 800 gig drives for database redo logs as well. Okay, so that's on the X7. So I think that the really interesting part is the X6s. If we take a look at the X6-2S and M really quickly, if you remember back in the X6-2S timeframe, these were single rack unit appliances. And at that point in time, when we released the X6-2S, we had the 3.2 terabyte NVMe drives. The S and the M, which looked exactly alike, except for a few more resources on the M, started out with 2 of the 3.2 terabyte NVMe drives, and you can add an additional 2 more 3.2 drives for a total of 12.8 terabyte drives. Well, unfortunately, the 3.2 terabyte drives are no longer available to the database appliance. But as I just talked about on the X7, the 6.4 terabyte drives are available. So therefore, we have the ability to expand the S and the M with the 6.4 terabyte drives. Now, the other X6-2 model that we had was the L model. And let me share that with you just really quickly, just to refresh your memory on the L. This was the X6-2L, and if you remember, this was the 2 rack unit system. It started out with 19.2 terabytes of raw storage. We used 6 of the 3.2 NVMe drives. And you could add an additional 3 NVMe drives, and that would give you a total of 28.8 terabytes. So again, once we, unfortunately, those 3.2 terabyte drives are not available any longer to the database appliance, but we can use the 6.4 terabyte NVMe drives. So therefore, we can utilize the 6.4 terabyte drives to expand the ODA X6-2S M&L. Let's take a look at a couple of use cases on how we can utilize those drives. So anytime you have an X6-2 SMNL with the 3.2 terabyte NVMe drives and you have a bad disk, it will be replaced with a 6.4 terabyte NVMe drive. The new drive will be formatted down. Now, I've been reminded by my ODA developers that formatting drives is not really true. What we really do is create a partition. It's just unfortunately that only 3.2 terabytes would be available for the usable storage on these new drives. Now let's take a look at a different option. The X6-2 S&M, if you expand your current S and M with the 6.4 terabyte drives, then they will be formatted down to 3.2 drives. Same with the L. However, you do have an option that if you would like to fully utilize the 6.4 terabyte NVMe drives, you can remove them out of the S, M, and L. you can redeploy your ODA, and the full utilization of the 6.4 terabyte drives will be realized within that new deployment. So you have a couple of options on the storage expansion for the X6 SM and L. Okay, so the last area that I want to talk about is the X6-2 HA. And if we take a look at the X6-2A, if you remember, the HA system has the 2 server nodes and the JBOD. Again, it can have a second JBOD. You can expand it just like the X7. However, on the X6 HA, we only used SSD drives. And the SSD drives that we had were the 200 gig SSDs for redo and the the 800 gig drives for the redo, and then we had the 24 terabytes of SSDs for data. Now, while that we do not have those 1.6 terabyte drives available to the database appliance any longer, what we can use are the 3.2 terabyte SSDs that are now available with the X7. And again, just like the SM and L, we have the ability to expand the X6-2 storage utilizing the 3.2 drives. Let's take a look at a table on how we can expand the X6 with the 3.2 terabyte drives. So first of all, I'm sorry, on that last slide, I did make a mistake. It's the 200 gig drives that are used for the radio logs, not the 800 gig. So if you have an HA with the 1.6 terabyte and the 200 gig SSD drives, if we have to do any kind of replacement with the 1.6 or we'll replace the 1.6 with the 3.2, and then if one of the redo logs, the 200 gig drives go bad, we'll replace it with 800 gig, and both of those will be formatted down to the smallest space. So here, if we replace a 800 gig drive in the X6, where the 200 gig drives still reside, then the new drive will be formatted down to 200 gigs. Now, if you want to expand the storage, yet again, if you fill the half-populated shelf, the base shelf on the X6HA, with the rest of them filled up with the 3.2 terabyte SSDs, then the 3.2 terabyte SSDs will be formatted down to 1.2 drives. If you remember back in the day, we used 1.6 drives, but they were partitioned or formatted down to 1.2 for the best performance. The 3.2, we can fully utilize those. So if you fill the half-populated first JBOD with the 3.2, they'll be formatted down to 1.2. If you have a fully populated X6-2 HA shelf with the 1.6 terabyte drives, and then you add a fully populated X7 SSD storage shelf to it, then unfortunately those drives will also be formatted down to 1.2 as well, and the 800 gig drives will be formatted down to 200 gigs. Now, there is an option that if you want to remove those 1.6 drives and replace them all with 3.2, if you have all 3.2 in the base JBOD and redeploy, then you can fully utilize the 3.2 storage capability. So what I wanted to chat with you today is we talked about the new 12214 patch that's available now with the database appliance. And the main feature set is the expansion of storage for your X7 and your X6 ODA models. There's a lot more information found in the documentation. There's a new chapter, Chapter 9, if you go take a look at your documentation about expanding the storage and how the drives behave with the bigger drives and the smaller drives combined. Unfortunately, today, the way it works is that the bigger drives will be partitioned or formatted down to the same size as the smaller drive that's currently in the system. If you want to fully utilize the capabilities or the storage capabilities of the drive, unfortunately, you'll have to pull out the older, smaller drives first and redeploy. I've also added a new blog this morning. If you go to blogs.oracle.com/ODA, you will see a new blog that talks about how to expand the storage on the database appliance as well. Okay, so that's my little tidbit on ODA Live. Viewers, if you join us and you ever want to ask a question, please feel free to add it into the chat. If you have any suggestions on what you would like to talk about on ODA Live, please send me an email to tammy.bednar@oracle.com. We'd love to hear from you about topics that you'd like to chat about on ODA Live. So this is a short segment. I know everybody's quite busy and I don't want to take up all your time. But first, I want to thank you for joining me today. Have your coffee. If you haven't had your coffee, go get some. And have a great day. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new topic on ODA Live. Okay, have a great day.